Yes, so it's my very dear friend Wendell Roderick's his book launch. It's called Poskem. Well, it's Poskem, but Poske is the pronunciation, and it's his third book. It's beautifully written. It's about a very dark secret, which is in Goan culture, but he tells the story in a very uplifting way. So I'm very proud of him for shining the light on this part of Goan history, but he's mixing in recipes and he's giving a real voice and a face to people who have gone through injustice in Goa, and hopefully these stories will prevent any more injustice from happening.
Okay, what is the meaning of a Poskem?
Poskem, you should actually ask Wendell, but basically Poskem is a child who would be adopted into a wealthy family and basically treated as a servant, even though they would take the family's name. So you could say that's a child who's born out of wedlock or out of marriage, and then were adopted by wealthy families, but they were never treated well.
Ma'am, audience have appreciated your role in Dobara, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
At an aspect of society that a lot of people don't want to always take a look about or talk about. And some people might say, why? But Wendell made a promise, a vow to a woman called Rosa at her grave, and that it almost can't get more lyrical and poetic than that. And she was one of his neighbors, and she was actually a poskim, which is basically a child who was adopted by a wealthy family and meant to work, you know, as a servant in their home. And now this is a very compelling part of our history as human beings. And what I love about this book in particular, and everyone has to read it, it is an exhilarating read. While you could say it's heavy subject matter, Wendell's way of telling it and his way with words is so exhilarating. It's so vital and it's so uplifting, which is essentially what the human condition is, right? We have to coexist with our sorrows, and side by side with our sorrows is great happiness and joy. And it's up to us as human beings, and it's up to the human spirit to find the joy in situations that appear to be very dire. And side by side with this story, this exhilarating story that Wendell has told, are these incredible recipes as well. So it really is a beautiful snapshot of Goa, of the human spirit, and how we endure. And again, I want to congratulate my dear friend Wendell on this beautifully written book. This is his third book, gentlemen and ladies, his third book. So we're expecting quite a repertoire now, and I can't wait to see what's down the pipeline as well. So congratulations.
Well, when I wrote the book, the first thing that I thought was I had to lighten the story because it was so dark. And I wrote as a byline Goans in the shadows, because they were in reality kept like that in the shadows. They didn't come out into the halls and sit down. They didn't sit down on the dining table. They hid in the kitchen. So I don't describe them very much in the book. Another thing I didn't do was to describe too much about the villages of Goa or the cities like Lyon or Bombay or Pune, because I left those also hazy. I wanted them to be in the foreground, and I felt it would only be Mario Miranda's cartoons or illustrations in this case that could illustrate the backdrop or the setting of the book, if you want to say, because I did not go into those areas. I did not talk about you know, the sweating crowds that go to Mapsa in a full bus. I left him to illustrate that. And the same thing I did with Paris and with Lyon. I just left it all kind of very hazy. So but I kept the narrative racing and running with emotion. When you go from page 1 to 10, it goes through like happiness and pain, and then suddenly despair and misery, and that's how the book ran. So Mario's page dividers, chapter dividers, formed a good foil as a background for the narrative that went through it.